Breaking It Down with Frank MacKay. This is 1039 LI News Radio.
I'd like to welcome everyone to Breaking It Down. Our very special guest today is a wonderful actress, BernNadette Stanis. How are you?
I'm fine, Frank. How are you?
Good. Where are you based out of nowadays?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Have you been there for many years?
Yeah, since the show. I mean, I've always maintained a home in New York also, but my main home is here in Los Angeles.
And by the way, when you say this the show, let me just remind people the show you're probably talking about is Good Times. Am I right?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, it is.
BernNadette played Thelma on the really groundbreaking sitcom back in the 70s. Did it go into the 80s?
No, it didn't.
It didn't.
It ended right there at 79.
You know, I just recently was in I was in a snowstorm down in Washington, D.C., and I was watching, maybe it was on One. Is that the name of the channel, One?
TV One.
TV One. And I watched a marathon for the first time in so long. I saw Good Times. And I'm thinking, this holds up. I mean, it is good. It was good then.
Thank you.
And it's still good. I mean, this is something that you have to be proud of.
Yes, I am very proud of it. I had no idea it would last these many years later.
Yeah, well, I've seen shows, and again, it's been a while since I saw it before that, and I saw some very well done episodes. It was very, very good. The casting, the writing, everything else. But I remember seeing shows that I saw when I was younger, and I'm 47 years old. So many of these shows in the 70s I watched with my mother. We'd sit there and we'd watch together. And I remember certain shows that I saw, I remembered them fondly. And then when I saw them years later on, whether Nick at Night or TV Land, I was like, boy, this is really bad. I can't believe I thought this was good. But this is bad. But it was the opposite here, and
oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I mean Ralph Carter, it was just wonderful. Yourself and certainly Esther and John Amos. What an actor! What a wonderful actor he was.
He was wonderful. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, prior to Good Times, if my memory serves me, you were in Juilliard.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you were studying dance and acting.
No, just acting.
Just acting.
And then when the show was over, I returned and finished out my education.
You got a 4-year degree from Juilliard?
Mm-hmm.
Were you on scholarship?
No.
Now, where did you grow up?
Brownsville.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah, in the Brooklyn section of Brownsville.
You're a local girl.
Yeah.
and
one of the roughest neighborhoods there is.
Yeah, I was going to say, certainly not easy. Have you been there recently?
Actually, I did go back last year when we did my life after. If you ever go, if you look, it's on the internet now. But life after, I had to go back and see some friends, and I talked about my best girlfriend that was there, and she's still. Well, she didn't stay there. She moved to Long Island, but we all got together. It was really a nice reunion. It's
a nice idea for a show. What they I know they do that. Often, and a lot of times they'll do it in documentaries where you go back to where you started out and to see how different it is. What was your experience like when you first saw the set, when you first met the other actors that you were going to be working with?
Well, I was the rookie. I was just elated to be a part of television. I mean, back then, I was like the first black female teenager ever on television.
That's right. I never thought of that, but that's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Absolutely, because I was a teen, and it was amazing when I walked on the set because I knew of Ralph Carter because he was in Raisin in the Sun on Broadway, and that's where Norman Lear got him from. And of course, I knew Esther from Maude, and who else? Well, I didn't know really Jimmy. I just knew him from the auditions and stuff like that. But he was like an upcoming, talent also. But he was already out there, like a little bit. So
was he doing stand-up?
He was doing stand-up. Yes. In fact, that's where Alan Manning discovered him at the Comedy Store, I think.
Well,
yeah, he was doing stand-up. Mm-hmm.
You're talking about a breakout star of a show. I mean, he certainly he broke out and he became that that star that everyone mentions.
Yeah.
Well, how did he handle it, Jimmy? We're talking
he
about
was
Jimmy
very
Walker.
good. I mean, he never let anything really go to his head. He was a very decent guy. He would work at night, being a comic, so he would come in the mornings a little quiet. He was always quiet, never talked too much. And I was always the one picking at him, talking about, you better say hi, and all that. He goes, I said, don't just give me a moan, say hi, hi. And he would say hi, I would just play with him. But we had a very, very wonderful chemistry. And even to this day, I get along with, all of them. But Jimmy and myself and Ralph are still very tight, very close.
If you're just tuning in, BernNadette Stanis is our very special guest, and you may know her best as Thelma on Good Times. And it really, again, just a wonderful show. What was your first experience with Norman Lear like?
Oh, well, I met Norman when I first auditioned. When I walked into the room for my first audition in New York at CBS, he was sitting there, and Jimmy was there. So I had met him, and I understood how. And then I started, reading about him and everything, and I realized how what a wonderful producer he was, and truly he really, really was. I mean, he handled things so wonderfully. Actually, I admired him very much, and I studied him, and I watched him. He was always so cool and always happy, but always really direct, And he didn't take any crap, but he did it in such style, and I admired him for that.
Did you recognize the moment and time that you were kind of creating? Because it really was, and I don't want to sound trite here, but it really was. It was groundbreaking. It was a family sitcom that was based out of the ghetto, and they talked about it like that, but they dealt with all types of issues and some heavier issues than really other shows were dealing with. I know All in the Family. Yeah. All in the Family dealt with heavy issues, and they were one of the groundbreakers. But this show here, Good Times, really took it to a different level. It really, was the first one that really touched on ghetto life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me see now. I had no concept that it was like that, of what was really going on, because I was young and I was trying to find my way. But I give a lot of credit to Esther Roll, because they at first wanted to give her the show being a single mom. And she said, there's no way I'm going to do this show as a single mom. She said, I want to portray black women who can hold on to their man. And I was raised, she said, I was raised in a home where there was a mommy and a daddy. And I know for, myself, I was raised in a home with a mother and a father. So we wanted to portray that side of Black America also, because there were a lot of families that were still together back then.
Yeah, well, I think
they were a husband and wife,
That's a big step for her to take at that point. I mean, that's very empowering.
It was.
I think,
very much so.
I think Esther Roll, certainly an empowering woman. She wasn't, she was a woman with, a few extra pounds, right? She wasn't, she wasn't this beauty queen that, and I don't mean that to slight her.
No,
I mean
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, she was, she looked like my mom. You know what I mean? Yeah, she looked like my, I'm white,
real mom.
Right?
Yeah.
If I were black, that would be my mom. Is Esther Roll, and I think that's amazing when they can point out a spot in history and really carve out, I called it this before, but a time capsule. And some of the shows that you hit on there would never, raise an eyebrow now. But if you think about it from a historic standpoint, it's a time capsule.
Absolutely. And see, that's another point that I really admire what Norman did too, because he was not ever afraid to go to the edge as far as he could go, and I mean, even with Archie Bunker. Now, Archie was a racist. I mean, who would touch on that, but he was a realist. So that's what I think I admired about him, and I think that's why all of his television shows went so big and so real and so wonderful, because he wasn't afraid. I mean, he dealt with it. You know, the first time a toilet was flushed on television ever was with, All in the Family.
That's true. I never thought of that, but that's true. That's,
you know what I mean? Who would do that? So back he was a gutsy guy, and because he was, a lot came out of that. I mean, I know for a fact that when I was on the show, they didn't really know what to do with my character, and I noticed that within 6 months of me being in the show, I was doing hi Mom, hi Dad. I was always in the bathroom. So one day I went over to Esther and I said, and I used to call her Mom.
Yeah.
I said, Mom, I'm getting bored, and I really think I can do a lot more than what I'm doing, and I'm getting bored. So she said, well, we don't want you to get bored. I said, no, I don't want to get bored. So she said, what do you want to do? I said, I want more to say. I want to have a voice. I want to have something to be. And so she said, okay, well, you let me handle that. And I said, oh, yeah, I was so happy. Oh, yes, sure. So that Friday when we had reading, table read, I noticed that I had the same 3, 4, 5 lines, maybe, hi, Mom, hi, Dad, and hey, JJ, shut up, JJ, and back in the bathroom. So at the end of the table read, Esther said, I would like to ask a question. So they said, oh, sure, Esther, tell me, what is it? So she said, are you guys ashamed of my daughter? They looked at each other. No, why would you say that? She said, I'm just saying, is she retarded or something? I'm like, no, Mom, you don't say that.
That's funny.
So anyway, that was another call coming in. I'm sorry. I said, no, Mom, you don't say that. So then she was looking, and then she said, no, I'm saying this because my oldest son, he has a lot to say. My baby son, he has a lot to say, and I would like my daughter to have a voice also.
That's terrific.
And yes, she did. She fought for me, and I give her a lot of credit for that, because so many actresses would never do that.
Well, how was the change in the lines after that? Did you get an increased amount of lines?
Oh, did I get a lot of lines? And you know what? And Esther would look at me like, you better learn all those lines too. And I knew in my heart that she stood up for me, and I was not going to let her down. And I would stay home the whole weekend. I wouldn't go anywhere but study those lines, so Monday I'll be ready.
Now,
because I wanted to make her proud.
That's amazing. It certainly, I'm sure it spurns a lot of loyalty also. What about John Amos? How was he towards you? And let me remind people who we're speaking with. We're with BernNadette Stanis, and she is a wonderful actress, I should say, and you know her probably best as Thelma on Good Times. Go ahead. How was John Amos?
John was very straightforward, and I knew when everything was on course and everything was fine, because I could just look at John and he was fine. But if I looked at John and he looked a little upset about something, I knew. I said, well, we're going to hear about this. We got to figure this out, what's going on, because he was so straight with it, and he was really like a dad, and he was really very watchful of all of us, very much so. Now, especially the children.
Yeah, well, Ralph Carter, I noticed at the end of Good Times, I don't know if it was all throughout, but the shows I watched recently, it said Ralph Carter, courtesy of Ralph on Broadway. What did he have? Like he had a film? I'm sorry, he had a play?
He had a play. He was on Broadway. And Norman at that time had to buy him out because he was under contract. And they bought him out way back in those days. They bought him out for $50,000.
That's a lot of money back then.
That's back then, yeah. So it would be like maybe $250 now, But
now not to get too personal here, but as far as the finances go, you came in hopefully after the residual issue was solved, right?
Yes, I did. I absolutely did.
So that's nice, right? That's
wonderful. That's wonderful.
Even now, it still pays. I mean, it's nice. You got to check.
Yes, it does. It really does. It's amazing because they gave at the end of the show they give you an option when the show is ending. They'll say, "Do you want a lump sum of money?" and then we sign you away from the show. In other words, when it goes into syndication or residuals and stuff like that, you will get nothing, but you'll get the whole lump sum up front. And I don't know who did and who didn't because no one really told anybody what they did. But for me, when they asked me and I went up to the office, I called my mom, because, I'm not going to make a decision like that by myself. So I said, Mom, this is what's going on. What do you think I should do? She said, well, your lawyer's not there and I'm not there. Don't you sign anything.
Good for her.
I'm so glad she did. I'm so glad she did because I still get my residual.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's terrific. Now, you grew up in Brownsville, and I can't imagine that it was a high end, right? It wasn't a
it's a project.
Yeah, projects, right? I mean, you didn't have a silver spoon in your mouth, that's for sure.
Oh, no. And it's really interesting because my dad and mom, their thing was really to educate us. They had 5 children. And, you can imagine how hard it could have been for them, and it was, actually. My father would always say, I can go buy a big old house somewhere, too. He said, but I choose not to because I want to spend my money educating my children. And every single one of us got a fantastic education. And we were all in the arts. My mother made sure of that. I mean, we were in dance, we were singing, we were this and we did that. My brothers, at the age of 11 and 12, they were in the opera Aida.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about your parents? Are your parents still with us?
No, both of them are gone.
Yeah, same here.
Both of them are gone.
Yeah. But they got to see your success on Good Times.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I did what I promised my mom I was going to do. I always wanted to help them. If I ever made it, I always wanted to help them educate and help their children out of Brownsville. And I did exactly what I told her I was going to do.
Now, how old were you when the show ended?
I'm not telling my age now, mister.
Well, I don't know what year it ended, so you could tell. You could say it, and then we could be there. But you were, I imagine, you were in your 20s, right?
I was just turning 20.
Just turning. Okay. Well, listen, you're still a young woman, and well, listen, I just spoke to a gentleman who was 75 years old. And he said, I'm 75 now. I said, it's not old anymore. People are living into 100 and 110.
Yeah.
It's
they are.
It's a different world, and we certainly live in a different world nowadays. Can you imagine a time back then when you're all doing this? Could you imagine thinking, 30 years from now, we'll have a black president? I mean, did you think that was possible back then?
Oh, my God. I never thought of it really, but I really never thought we'd have a black one. And my mother was alive to see it happen. Although she was suffering from the dreaded disease, Alzheimer's, in 2008, she was able to see it. I don't know if she really, really comprehended it, but she did see it. And I think that, she did get it. She did get it, but she was able to see us have a black president.
Yeah,
and, it was just, it was wonderful. It was wonderful to see that it's possible it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, coming from where you were at that time period, I mean, it's being the first. I mean, think about it. It was in the 70s. What did it start in 73? 1973?
Yeah, well, 74 we hit the air.
So
we hit the air in 74. But you know what the funny part about it is that we were just coming off of the 60s, and that's when the revolution was.
Right.
And so it really wasn't, Good Times came in a place where, we were just finding ourselves as black people, the 70s with the Afro, there was a lot of pride, there was a lot of stuff going on. It was very exciting. And, so, and to think about it today, when I look at our people, it's so different than when we were back then. Of course, we've all grown in different areas and stuff like that, but it was something. It was really a revolution. I was really in the midst of it, And to think just 30 years later that we would have a black president, absolutely not. There's no way you can really, really absolutely feel that was going to happen.
BernNadette Stanis, everyone, is our very special guest. She's a wonderful actress. You know her as Thelma from Good Times, the sitcom of the 70s. and she's done, certainly tremendous work. But you also do work with the Alzheimer's Foundation. We have about 2 minutes left. Can you give us what's going on in your life right now and what you're working on?
Okay, I am writing my latest book, which is called The Last Night, and it has to do with my journey through Alzheimer's with my mother. I walked through Alzheimer's with my mother, and in the book I talk about my life, and I wanted to introduce my mother to the world, and also introduce my dad, and let them know who we were and how this devastation affected us. And you're going to get a lot of that. Also, what it is, the stages, what I do as an advocate for them. I'm going to fight for awareness and education of this disease because, African Americans get this disease twice as much as anyone does. And the reason why I named my foundation, well, actually the foundation is for my mom, so it's called Remembering the Good Times.
Clever.
And it's ironic, yes, and it's ironic because, first of all, it's about remembering, and then I say the good times, and I was the girl on Good Times. But my mom and I were sitting down one day watching Good Times, and she looked at me, and she looked at the show, and she said, "You know what? That's a cute little old girl." I know.
Yeah.
And so the knife, it was like a knife in my heart, and it twisted. And I'm like, oh, my God, my mama does not recognize that was me. And it hurt me so bad because that was one of the highlights of our lives. And, it was like, my God. And then I said, Mommy, and I always go along with her. And I said, Mommy, she sure is a cute little girl. So right then I said to myself, because this disease took away that memory of that wonderful time in our lives from my mother, and my mother's the one who gave me the face of Thelma, that I'm going to take the same face and fight back and fight for a solution to this Alzheimer's thing. Anything I can do to help and fight with them, I'm going to do it.
I cared for a grandmother with Alzheimer's for about 4 years, and I certainly appreciate everything you're doing there. We're out of time. Our very special guest is BernNadette Stanis. And BernNadette, maybe we can get a part 2 or a part 3 with you sometime in the future. Again, can you give us your website?
Okay, rememberingthegoodtimes.org. And we're looking for sponsors because we give galas and things like that. So anything people can do to help the foundation would be appreciated.
Rememberingthegoodtimes.org.
Yes.
BernNadette Stanis, thank you very, very much for your time.
Welcome.
And continued success. And let's catch up soon.
Okay, thank you.
We'll be back after this.